God is gone. God remains missing, and it's by our own doing. Nietzsche wrote those words more than 100 years ago, but somehow they feel more relevant than ever. It's tempting to dismiss them as mere provocation, another philosopher picking a fight with believers. But there's more beneath the surface. Nietzsche wasn't rejoicing over God's death. This wasn't a triumphant shout, but a bleak report. The old pillars that once held up the human spirit have crumbled. What he meant was that meaning itself, a sense of order or guiding purpose that came from above, is gone. The great moral systems, the comforting promise of eternal truths, the idea that things fit together in some higher plan, all of that has collapsed. And now, we're left wandering among the ruins. This sense of loss hangs over you today, even if you can't put words to it. Outwardly, things seem fine. There's food, people who care, a routine, maybe even a dream or two. Yet inside, something's off, an emptiness, a quiet sense of being out of place, not quite present in your own life. To the world, you look okay, even you try to ignore the ache. But when the distractions fade, at night especially, that familiar emptiness surfaces again. You feel the question, that haunting question you keep trying to smother with noise, scrolling, binge-watching, any substitute for meaning, but it lingers, persistent, always waiting in the dark when everything else is silent. What does any of this even mean? The truth is, you're not the only one grappling with these feelings. And hey, you aren't mistaken for experiencing them either. Our world has lost the old gods, but nothing new has stepped in to take their place. We were raised on simple instructions: study, work, form a family, be upright citizens. Somehow though, bit by bit, that safe narrative frays at the edges. At some point it hits you. The things you were promised aren't enough. You did everything you were told, and there's still this aching hollowness. Nietzsche knew about this emptiness, and stood right up to it. No numbing, no comforting lies, no pretending it's all okay. He saw that losing the old answers isn't really an end. It's a strange new beginning. A life without certainties. Either you face it and try to create meaning for yourself, or the void swallows you whole. If you're here now, maybe you recognize this ache too. Maybe you've gone through the motions, tried to convince yourself and everyone else that things are fine. Deep down though, you know something inside is fractured. I won't give you empty comfort. This feeling isn't your finale. It could be a silent, lonely starting point, if you can bear to continue. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Nietzsche meant by this statement, and, more crucially, how you can actually use this stark reality. Once God is gone, what's left is you, and you need to be prepared for that. Have you realized how modern life seems almost designed to drown out quiet? Everything's loud, everything moves fast. Your morning starts with notifications, your night ends with a barrage of distractions. You wake up haunted by tasks, and the exhaustion you feel at bedtime goes far deeper than physical fatigue. It's something existential, and through all this, everyone acts like everything's under control. But it isn't. We were promised progress would bring happiness, more comfort, more tech, more options, and everything would fall into place. But now that we have all these things, why are we still so hollow? With all of society's accomplishments, why do depression and anxiety rates continue climbing? Why do we carry this vague ache, this exhaustion that outlasts sleep, this unease that no achievement seems to settle? The modern world has sold us an illusion, the sense that we're in control, that drifting along will somehow reveal meaning. We're told to pick a career, stay productive, achieve, then announce it all online. What's never mentioned is that this script we follow rests on foundations that have already collapsed. The morality we once relied on has lost its core. Religion, which used to promise redemption, has become just another commodity. Even science, which many treat as the new ultimate authority, doesn't deliver purpose, just answers to questions. Nietzsche saw this coming long before anyone else. He pointed out that by doing away with God, we didn't just discard a belief. We dismantled the framework our lives depended on. Our stumbling block isn't simply faithlessness. The real issue is that we keep behaving as if there's still some ultimate truth guiding everything, even though, deep down, we suspect there isn't. We're stuck in contradiction. Anything is possible, but the reasons for doing anything are gone. That void creeps in after finishing a major project, wondering what's next, or when you're at a gathering yet feel detached. Even when you reach your lifelong goals, the emptiness remains. This is the vacuum left behind in a world where the old gods are gone, and no new ones have appeared. The real tragedy is that most people never look this feeling in the eye. It is numbed. We buy things, we take trips, we eat, we post our smiles, and speak endlessly of optimism and gratitude. But beneath it all, there is only a frantic scrabbling to patch up a void that never stops expanding. The missing piece isn't drive or ambition. It's meaning, a meaning that can't be imported, can't be handed over by a guru or plucked from a bestseller. What's missing is meaning that you have to drag up from your own darkness alone. And it's exactly at this bleak point that Nietzsche's infamous words echo with a cold clarity. How many people actually grasp what he meant by God is dead? It's become a slogan to bandy about, but barely anyone truly wrestles with how ruinous it is. Next, we'll do what most shy away from, will descend into the raw, shattering, and perilous reality of what those words signify. Only then, you might realize just how vast the chasm is inside you and how much it changes. If any of this feels real to you, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here. This isn't bravado, it's an obituary. Nietzsche didn't pop champagne over the death of God. He mourned it, cried out, sounded the alarm, because for him, when God died, everything that we clung to as unshakable truth collapsed with him. An ending, not a celebration. Nietzsche felt the full gravity of what was unraveling. He wasn't exulting in the death of God, like a victor surveying a battlefield. His was a dirge, a foreboding confession of what we had unleashed. For Nietzsche, God's demise signaled not just the downfall of a deity, but the disintegration of all that humanity clung to as unshakable order, certainty, the very architecture of what we thought was eternal. When he said God, he did not mean only the Christian God. The word pulsed with every shape of absolute, any metaphysical fortress that offered final rules about goodness, evil, existence, fate, now withered to dust. God was never just a presence. It was the cold star by which we navigated our meaning, supposedly anchored beyond the pitiless acid of time. Centuries shaped themselves around this illusion. Morality, once branded into law by the divine, grew brittle when exposed to the harsh air. The meaning of existence was dictated, not questioned. Destiny unfolded like a script no one dared defy. But then, the fabric tore. Science stripped away superstitions. Revolutions toppled thrones wrapped in sanctity. Morality revealed itself as a shiver in the human mind, not a message from the heavens. History, with a grim grin, exposed the grotesque futility of crusades in the name of eternal truths. Unseen, the candles upon the altar dwindled, not snuffed out with violence, but left to starve for lack of devotion. A silence crept in. The temple didn't fall to invaders, but suffocated in neglect. Darkness swept in, slow and relentless, and with it, the spine-chilling realization nothing sacred, nothing certain, only the echo of lost prayers in the vast hollow. The phrase, God is dead, reflects a realization that our world has lost the anchor of some higher, unquestionable truth steering our actions. It is the extinction of a simpler, metaphysical certainty. Life comes without instructions now, and the sorrow in this is that we can't help but keep searching for a purpose, holding on to the hope that some meaning still lingers in the emptiness. Nietzsche named this void nihilism, the deep, aching moment when we see that our loftiest ideals have become hollow, with nothing to fill that echoing space. No replacement God arrives, no fresh map is handed to us. There remains only a yawning emptiness. The hardest truth of all is that we are responsible. It was by our own hands, our doubts, our hunger for self-direction, our rejection of familiar dogmas, that we tore down the sacred structures. It didn't happen by chance. Now we drift in this unfamiliar dark, clinging to the imitation of certainty, struggling to disguise how profoundly unmoored we are. Nietzsche saw this collapse coming, and that's why, in his parable of the madman, the man runs to the marketplace, howling that people have not begun to grasp what has been unleashed. He asks, have we not heard the sound of God's burial? He knew that the death of God would tremble through our spirits, long before anyone truly understood the loneliness left behind. I have felt that silence, the hollow ache left by the absence of meaning, and sometimes it seems the world still refuses to mourn what we, ourselves, have lost. Have you ever noticed that the principles you were raised with feel strangely empty now? Do you sometimes wonder if the happiness you chase belongs to someone else? A stranger you barely recognize in the mirror? Maybe it's crossed your mind that everything you've been working for rests on nothing but shifting sand. If any of this sounds familiar, you might already be wandering through the landscape Nietzsche foresaw, where what once felt solid begins to dissolve beneath your feet. And what happens when this sense of hollowness finally overtakes you? When the absence of meaning becomes a quiet ache that haunts your days and nights? When you wake up to the realization that nothing is truly sacred anymore? Soon, we'll look directly at the shadow that Nietzsche called nihilism. a force that can wreck the foundation of your world, or just maybe force you to start again from nothing. Have you ever caught yourself thinking that none of this really counts for anything? That your routines, getting up, working, laughing, checking items off lists, chasing after ambitions, are just mindless motions, as if you're following a script somebody else wrote, with no care for how it ends. This isn't just exhaustion. It's not simple apathy. It's nihilism. Nietzsche didn't just theorize about it. He lived with it, described it with the accuracy of someone who fell into the void and managed to come back. Nihilism arrives when every value holding your world together collapses, when the usual distinctions, right and wrong, success and failure, good and bad, lose their meaning and feel as arbitrary as the rules of a forgotten game. When you finally see that the universe holds no secret meaning just for you, that there's no veiled pattern holding things together, no assurance that everything will someday make sense, or worse, perhaps there never was. This is the hour when the soul is stripped bare, emptied of belief, robbed of purpose, adrift without anchor. Nietzsche named this shadowy state passive nihilism, not a fiery rebellion, but a quiet fading, a surrender where the spirit stops searching, stops shaping. It drifts through the motions, swallowing the absurd, feeding on distractions that never satiate. Food, color, laughter, all blunted, all drained of savor and sense. Survival passes for living. Despair seeps beneath bland daily rituals and smirking irony. The passive nihilist shrugs nothing matters. But that's not understanding, it's retreat. Because nihilism isn't a destination. It's a bleak passage, treacherous and stifling. Most wanderers never find the end. Nietzsche saw nihilism as a fever in the maturing mind, a signpost on a darkened journey. But he whispered a warning: cross this wasteland, or let it hollow you out. It does devour. It pretends with apathy, but thrashes with hidden agony. It offers a mask of normalcy, while underneath something gnaws. Its laughter echoes in empty rooms. Its laughter echoes in empty rooms. It drones on about liberty, yet finds freedom is a prison when nothing truly matters. This is the desert of the soul, and plenty never return. Nietzsche did not wish for you to perish in that wasteland. Instead, he hoped you would endure it, burning away everything that was never truly yours, searching for what might withstand utter ruin. He saw nihilism as a kind of torment, the painful labor that might precede a different kind of existence. Only if you refuse to dull your senses, refuse to hide, refuse the comforting lies of easy meanings, might you emerge from the darkness changed, perhaps stronger, or more lucid, or somehow lighter. But such a passage demands payment in suffering: the harsh ache of honesty, the desolate silence after illusions collapse, the solitary task of building your own meaning out of nothing. Nietzsche understood this toll. He knew it personally. In The Gay Science, he likened such agony to a brutal cleansing, the wound that breaks you away from shallow living and drags you under. That descent is what we must look at next. Sometimes, the sorrow you're desperate to escape is not a curse, but a teacher, the only thing left that can reveal your true self, and maybe your last, fragile hope for renewal. Most people treat suffering like a malfunction, as though pain signals that something in life has broken down. From childhood, we're encouraged to steer clear of discomfort, to prioritize ease, safety, and predictability. The idea that life should feel good all the time has become an article of faith in our era. Nietzsche, however, argued the reverse. For him, suffering wasn't a flaw in the system, but a necessary ingredient for achieving anything significant. He regarded suffering as the soul's workshop. Those lonely nights, those hard separations, those crises of meaning are where you have no choice but to confront your real self beneath the surface. That's where truth reveals itself. In The Gay Science, he insists that only intense suffering truly liberates the spirit, since only it can shatter the illusions we cling to. It alone has the power to rip away the lies we construct for ourselves day after day. If you feel lost, Nietzsche suggests, it's because you've always been kept from hitting rock bottom. You've been taught to paper over the void with distractions, platitudes, pop remedies, and shallow self-help. What Nietzsche understood and experienced himself is that any real depth of character is forged only when you plunge to your lowest point, when you break so completely that rebuilding yourself from the inside becomes the only way forward. Nietzsche's life was marked by illness, isolation, rejection, and deep existential uncertainty. He experienced a profound sense of loss, of his health, faith, love, and friendships. Yet, it was in this barren landscape that his most powerful insights took shape. Not in spite of the suffering, but because of it. For Nietzsche, pain acted as a forge, stripping away everything false, weak, or inherited. What remains is the self, exposed and defenseless before existence. True strength only becomes apparent when there's nothing left to support you. Life's value emerges most clearly when mortality presses close. Authenticity is found in the willingness to lose even your previous notions of identity. Nietzsche rejected any possibility of renewal that didn't involve direct confrontation with hardship. There's no genuine growth without real suffering. Every awakening comes from some crisis, every transformation from a journey through darkness. Light has no meaning without shadow, and often, it's when everything seems irretrievably lost that something new, stronger, and more genuinely your own might arise. But caution is necessary. Not all suffering has transformative power. Nietzsche's idea is of a suffering that clarifies and strengthens, not self-victimization or wallowing in misery. The process begins with staring into the rawness of pain and quietly asking, "What are you trying to tell me?" Perhaps the impossible ache that gnaws at you is the very part destined to fade, making space for something unfamiliar, but necessary, to emerge. That realization ushers you into the next lonely phase. Because once everything you leaned on has fallen apart, and you've dared to meet your suffering eye to eye, you reach the most harrowing, uncertain stage. Here, planted in the ruins, you must try to rebuild meaning, but you can't use borrowed answers or comforting cliches. There's no instruction manual for stitching together a new sense of purpose from the smoldering fragments of a life that no longer fits. The next step is to invent yourself anew, uneasily, from nothing, and that's what we're going to attempt in the next section. If something in these words stirs something deep inside you, you might want to look at my e-book, Beyond the Shadow. There, Jung's central ideas are untangled, offering you practical ways to get to know the darkest corners of yourself. You'll find it in the pinned comment. Here you are, after all this. The floor beneath you has collapsed. The things you were sure of have faded away. Nothingness glares back at you. Suffering refuses to be silenced, and the answers you once trusted crumble like dust in your hands. What remains when the old roots vanish, and grief is the only companion? What will you choose now? What happens when even your own reflection becomes unrecognizable? When the self you once understood slips away like a fading shadow? Nietzsche insisted this was where things truly begin, where masks are stripped away, not the end, but the unsettling origin. In the wake of collapse, where familiar truths are nothing more than ruins, the genuine possibility to shape yourself emerges. Only in the ashes of certainty does creation become possible. When all the answers you inherited turn to dust, you are not simply abandoned, you are exposed, completely raw beneath a gaze that offers no warmth. And this rawness is unsettling, yes, but it is also the only true liberation that remains. The liberty to construct, select, and assemble from what has survived the wreckage. But what does that actually mean? It means that when morals rot and absolutes have died at your feet, you are tasked, alone, with forging your own purpose. There is no comfort here, no guarantees, and nothing pretty in the void left behind by a dead God. Only the silent imperative to invent your own meaning. If you want to begin, consider this: stop hunting for meaning as if it's a bauble dropped in the dark. There's no sacred text, silver-tongued prophet, or secret class that will hand you wholeness. Meaning is forged from agony, built out of your freedom, and the silent, bloody choices you make. Ask yourself honestly, what monstrosities, what beauty can I conjure from this emptiness? Second, choose something worth the pain. Nietzsche's words echo like a cold wind. He who bears a why can bear almost anyhow. So what is your why as the night closes in? Perhaps it's art. The answer will define the shape of your torment and the dim possibility of hope. Maybe it's the search for truth. Maybe it's truly serving someone besides yourself. Whatever it is, it must reach into the deepest parts of who you are. The rare thing that answers to the heavy feeling of being alive. 3. Begin small, but stay honest. You don't need your entire life mapped out for this to matter. It asks for one thing right now. A single bold move, a quiet bit of honesty, the no you were too scared to give, or the yes you kept saving for another time. Meaning isn't thunderous, and it doesn't announce itself. It lives in the overlooked decisions, the way you meet reality barefaced, letting yourself feel it all. 4. Seek out silence and your own company. In a world flooded by constant noise, finding your own voice comes at a cost. Nietzsche walked alone in the Alps, speaking only with his solitude. Sometimes that's what it takes, not to step away from living, but to remember there's still something underneath all the noise. 5. Let yourself walk away from what's outlived its place in you. Suffering lingers mostly because we can't let go of who we used to be, or the identities we wore just to be accepted. Sometimes the life you've been living has gone hollow, but you keep feeding it out of habit. Creation, even for nature, isn't peaceful. It comes from letting go, from leaving old ruins behind. Consume only what is essential, and observe what endures beyond the ruins. This is the genuine duty that comes with freedom. There is no guide to dictate your actions. You stand alone, and that solitude can be terrifying. Yet, it is also your greatest strength. You don't require rescue. You need to create. And creation demands dedication, effort, and passion. It asks you to confront the void and dare to sketch a path in the unknown. When you reach that point, everything shifts. You no longer rely on promises or await a savior. You become the creator, the craftsman. You turn disorder into structure, suffering into expression, and loss into motivation. Life stops being something that simply happens to you and becomes something you actively shape. It is an affirmation against absurdity. But nature didn't stop there. He spoke of a being who goes further than just making meaning, one who not only rises above nihilism, but channels it into vibrant energy, creative will, and the pursuit of transcendence. This being is the Übermensch, the focus of our final discussion, for ultimately the key question may not be how to live, but who you are becoming. If you have reached this point, it is no accident. Perhaps you are among those unwilling to settle for simple solutions. Here's your slightly paraphrased version, who can keep pretending that everything is okay when, deep down, something inside is desperate for change. You've faced emptiness. You've wandered through confusion. You've stared into the void. And now the big question is, what will you do with this raw freedom that nature has handed you? The death of God, as discussed, isn't merely the fall of religious faith. It signals the end of spiritual reassurance. It's when all supports collapse, and you're left alone before existence. No guidebook, no promises, no higher plan to lean on. Yet, within this vast silence where many lose their way, nature leaves room for a profound act of human defiance to remake oneself. This is where the image of the Übermensch or Overman steps in. And let's be clear, this isn't about being biologically superior or intellectually conceited. It's about surpassing the narrow, reactive, resentful side of humanity. The Übermensch doesn't just muddle through nihilism. They harness it to affirm life in all its harshness, disorder, unpredictability, and wonder. This kind of person isn't waiting to be saved, doesn't crave validation, and has no need for an afterlife, having realized the real miracle is to be alive now, and that the only lasting eternity is found in how fiercely you experience each present moment. The Übermensch forges new values. They move freely atop the remains of what once was, turning grief into creation. At their core, they are artists of their own becoming. This transformation doesn't start with grand gestures, but with the smallest private choices. It begins the moment you decide to act without needing certainties, without guidance, even in the face of a hostile world. Thus, the quest unfolds in how fiercely you inhabit each moment. The Übermensch invents new paths where none are mapped. They refuse to walk the lines others have drawn, finding meaning not in external approval, but in living fully, passionately, and authentically, no matter the pain or confusion. Nature never promised comfort. Her purpose was to rouse you, to jolt you awake so you might honestly examine your own existence and ask, what am I waiting for? There is no absolute meaning handed down to you by the universe. Instead, there's the possibility to shape your life into something beautiful and worth living. The choice is now in your hands. Share in the comments. What moment in this video stood out for you? Did it stir something in the emptiness, in your struggles, or a longing to build anew? If this reflection challenged you or shifted how you see your own life, don't let it end here. This is only the starting point. I'm linking a playlist below with other essential videos about nature on this channel, each one exploring these philosophical questions even further, underlining that understanding nature is a lifelong exploration, not a single epiphany. And as you move forward, ask yourself, now that the old certainties are gone, what will you create in their place? Until next time.